Today on Eyewitness Newsmakers, our annual Los Angeles Year in Review and a look ahead to 2018. With the LA City Council leadership, Council President Herb Wesson and Council members Mitch Englander and Nury Martinez. We will talk about top issues. Immigration, the first step toward declaring LA a sanctuary city. Does that change anything? LA becomes the largest U.S. city for recreational marijuana. It's a lot of potential tax revenue, but is there a price? Sexual harassment and its fallout. Is the city taking new steps to prevent it? And tax money starts coming in for homeless housing. How soon will it make a difference?
ABC 7 presents Eyewitness Newsmakers with Adrienne Alpert.
Good afternoon. I'm Adrienne Alpert, and I welcome back to this program the City Council leadership, President Wesson, President Pro Tem Englander, and Assistant President Pro Tem Martinez. Thank you for coming in. Let me talk to you all. The City of Sanctuary idea, immigration, a huge topic in Los Angeles. What do you mean by passing this law? What will it do that it hasn't done before?
Well, I think that all of us probably want to speak to that issue, but just let me say this, that we feel that we have a responsibility to protect all of the residents in the city of Los Angeles. And for us, we're declaring ourselves a city of sanctuary because we want individuals to know that whoever you are, it's our job to make sure that your rights are protected.
Having said that, I also think it's important to note that one of the most terrifying things for anyone who's undocumented is to being able to report a crime to our LAPD officers. We've seen our crime statistics go down, especially in domestic violence. So we want to ensure that the undocumented population in our communities and in our city of Los Angeles feels that the law enforcement is there to protect them. We want to ensure that our families, hardworking families in our city, know that their elected officials care for them, want to protect them, and want to make sure they're safe.
Before we get to some of the fallout from that, though, a Police Special Order 40, which has been around for years, says that LAPD does not inquire as to someone's immigration status if they have contact with the police department.
And that's true.
Wasn't that enough?
Sure, but at the same time, you have to continue to build trust in the immigrant community. You see people you see moms going to the grocery stores, fathers dropping off their kids in the morning at school. The most terrifying thing as a parent is you go and drop off your kids at school, and all of a sudden law enforcement shows up, or ICE, and they detain you, and then you're all of a sudden in proceedings to be deported. That must be one of the most terrifying things for any parent. So we still have an issue with trying to ensure the undocumented community that they are safe and that they're safe to report their crimes to law enforcement.
Councilman Englander, I know with your focus on the police especially, we've learned that a $3 million grant for community policing to LAPD was withheld, believed maybe because of LA's position. Are you waving a red flag in front of this administration, and is it unnecessary?
This is where I really have an issue with this. For the federal government, for any administration to hold a city or a county hostage to critical public safety funds, is, no matter what their policies are wrong. In fact, on the sanctuary policies, we conform with the Department of Justice requirements on violent felons that are reported. We certainly still work with them in that type of capacity, but for them to withhold funds, these are taxpayer funds paid for by Angelenos that we deserve, and they go to critical programs with the police department.
Is the city considering any kind of legal action as to this withholding of these funds?
Absolutely, yes.
And we're looking at all of our options as it pertains to this grant and any other further federal money.
So to really try to sum it up, the City of Sanctuary idea is more in name to tell residents of Los Angeles that they have rights here?
Well, the bottom line is we didn't officially declare as. This is a symbolic move, and it's critically symbolic to send the message to particularly those who are most vulnerable, who, if they don't report a crime because they're scared of law enforcement, it then not only pushes them into the shadows, but they become more vulnerable and susceptible to crime.
And now, it seems to me that what I've always read about this is that the City of Sanctuary especially really has a greater impact on the sheriff, county jails, and when someone's been detained by the sheriff and released and ICE wants to pick them up before they get out of jail, allowing ICE in the jail. San Francisco takes a harder line stance than LA does. Is there some kind of compromise on this that might work?
Well, and I think, again, we've had Special Order 40, as you mentioned, on the books for decades. And law enforcement is trained not to ask any type of status. and not to target any particular type of population at all.
And we have a committee on immigrants and civil rights, and we meet on a regular basis. We work with the law enforcement community. We work with all of the residents of the city of Los Angeles. And I think what's important for us is to send a message to the people that live here that we care about them, we're going to protect them, and that we're going to protect the finances of this city. And working together, we believe we can do that.
But we have also taken steps to ensure that people are protected. For example, in our committee, we're currently debating whether we have a letter of representation for some of our folks that can carry with them on their person in case they get stopped by someone from ICE. A representation letter that would give them the power to say, I cannot be questioned without an attorney present.
And
that's
the city
very
has
powerful.
contributed to a legal fund.
And we have contributed $2 million to a legal fund for the same reason, for that people can feel they have legal representation at the time that they get detained.
Now, look, to all of you, you know that there are people watching this who will say, you're sworn to uphold the law. The law is if someone's here illegally, they should be deported.
And I think this is where people have a misconception, because it's not a crime to be in this country illegally. It's a civil penalty and violation, but it's not a crime. And I think people don't understand that's an issue in terms of their interpretation of what that status might mean.
And I think it's also important that people recognize that we on the council, we in city government, are following all of the federal laws where it relates to immigration. So it's not like we're going outside of the lines. We're going right down the middle of the street and doing things that are appropriate.
I know the city must have a lobbyist. Is anybody trying to talk to Jeff Sessions and just say this is the impact that your policies have on Los Angeles?
I'm sure you have other better things we should be talking about than talking about Jeff
I
Sessions.
think what's more important for us is to figure out how we can protect the city, how we can protect all of the residents, and to make sure that we have the law on our side. And that's what you see the mayor doing, the city attorney doing. That's what we do on our committee.
And how we can regain just human decency. The rhetoric that's coming out of Washington isn't helping us. Anyone who preys on undocumented people, anyone who assaults an undocumented woman should be prosecuted. And that person should not be afraid to be deported or separated from her family simply because something horrific happened to her, or because she's here undocumented.
And the problem now is it's not just rhetoric. They're withholding critical dollars, and that's wrong.
And the last thing, I want to jump in on this because Ms. Martinez touched on it. There are crimes that are occurring that are not being reported.
Correct.
And see, that as a resident of the city of Los Angeles would frighten me more than anything else. When you have someone that maybe their status is in question and they've witnessed something and now they're afraid to come forward, and then that means some criminal gets away, and that's something that we have not seen.
What dovetails right off of this, of course, is DACA and the Dreamers and the deferred action. Where can, if anything, Los Angeles step in on that for the youth who were brought here as children, younger, and now are not documented and have lived here most of their lives?
And that's certainly something that in our committee we certainly are also conversations about how we stand with our dreamers, and we are a city of dreamers. We want to ensure that every single policy that we're enacting, the city of Sanctuary also protects our dreamer populations. These kids have done nothing wrong but being raised in this country. They've gone through our education system. They have every right to be here.
The president did give a little bit longer deadline to Congress to come up with something to do with Dreamers.
But I almost feel like that's always debatable. It depends on what day he's having and what else he wants to get done. He always seems to pull out that dreamer card, and that's not fair for our young people.
And see, this is the United States of America, not the divided states of America. So we feel that here in Los Angeles, that we have to be the beacon of light, beacon of hope, and do everything that we can to stay unified, because that is not what's occurring in Washington, D.C.
All right, they're telling us we have to take a break. We, of course, have many questions about homelessness, about the city, about finances, and recreational pot. Stay with us. We'll have plenty more coming up.
You're watching Eyewitness Newsmakers.
We are back with the leadership of the Los Angeles City Council members, Wesson, Martinez, and Englander. Let's talk about the fact that in 2 days from now, recreational marijuana under Proposition 64 will be legal in the state of California. LA is poised to become the largest city in the country allowing recreational pot. Will the doors be open come January 1st?
Well, let me start on this subject. First of all, I want to make it crystal clear that we on the council are following the instructions given to us by our bosses, the voters of the state of California and the voters of the city of Los Angeles. And so we aggressively began having hearings on this subject in May of 2016. So we believe that our bosses instructed us to tax, police, and regulate marijuana. We've done that, and come January 1st, we will become the largest city in this country to have a very thought-out program to deal with this issue.
You know, one of the most important things I think for the council has been, and part of our debates have been ensuring that we don't have an overconcentration of either the cultivation, the retail, or the manufacturing of cannabis in our city. We don't want to see the same problem we had in the late 90s, where you had an overconcentration of liquor licenses. In communities of color and low-income communities, we want to make sure that we do this correctly and that we enforce it, or else...
So you do it through zoning then?
We're going to do it through zoning. We're going to use our zoning process and our community plans to dictate to us how many retail stores and cultivation, manufacturing, especially in our industrial areas, which I know Mitch and I both share. We have that concern. We don't want an overconcentration of this happening in our districts.
And I think this is some of the best thought out rules and regulations that we've come up with, and I think it's going to work well. We're all hoping. And in fact, we ended up, after Prop D passed, we had over 1,000 retail stores throughout the city of Los Angeles. In the new regulations, we'll have less than 400.
That is a really good point. For example, when I came into office 4 years ago, there was 50 retail marijuana shops in the community of Van Nuys alone.
At that point, medical marijuana.
Medical marijuana under
right.
Prop D. So we've learned lessons from Prop D. We just want to ensure that that doesn't happen again.
What happens to medical marijuana shops once can medical be sold as
They'll
recreational?
be able to be one license.
So it will be sort of...
The ones that are Prop D compliant today and that are following the rules and regulations will be the first up to be looked at and reviewed for licensing for retail.
And you know, one other thing that I want to highlight, we also have a social equity component. We'll be the largest city, in fact, the only city other than maybe Oakland that has this component, and it recognizes a failed war on drugs in certain economically depressed areas. So we believe we've set forth a template so in the future other cities can be able to model their programs after what we've done.
No matter what you say here, as you know, the federal government says it is a federal crime to use, sell, possess marijuana. It's a Schedule I drug, still by federal definition. Therefore, all the pot shops here can't use federal banking laws or charge cards or anything. So these are cash businesses. And I think anybody would say subject to lots of crime, robberies. What can you do?
Well, the council shares your concern. That's one of the reasons why we have a committee that's looking at the establishment of the Los Angeles Municipal Bank, which would be a bank that hopefully would be able to handle all of the cannabis transactions. We've also received a recommendation from one of our colleagues, Bob Blumenfield, to come up with a cashless way to do this. So beginning in January, this council will be working feverishly to try to come up with ways to address those concerns.
And we have to take the cash out of the business because from just a public safety perspective, we're starting off January 1st with an enforcement team that really knows what they're doing and working with Los Angeles Police Department and Commission Investigation Division. But there's too much money in terms of cash in this industry. So, and in fact, on top of that, recently all the banks in California have gotten together to figure out how can they do it outside of a federally insured program so they can set up perhaps a separate type of bank if we can't set up a municipal bank. We'll figure it out because we have to figure it out.
Well, the other part of that is what city figures that should this business become successful, you've got about another $50 million in income from the taxes on.
And that's a low estimate. You know, what's going to happen?
$50 million a year.
Yes.
In taxes.
It could be higher than that. It could be.
But if it's a cash business, how do you know?
It could be higher than that. That's why we're trying to take the cash out of this business. And the one way that we're going to be able to change federal laws is to ensure that conversations are taking place throughout this country. So you have people in Ohio are having conversations about this. And the more we have dialogue, I think you will eventually see the federal government come to the realization.
And we hope that we can also learn from states like Colorado and state of Washington, who've already legalized marijuana. So we hope to learn from them as well. But the only thing I want to emphasize is all of the things we've voted on and all the regulations that are coming down, none of this is going to be any good unless we have the enforcement piece. So unless we fund the department that's going to regulate this industry, we need to also ensure that they're going to have the ability to enforce our laws.
But come January 1st, people can sell recreational pot here, but it's going to be cash only.
Yes, but it's also not going to happen overnight. So come January 1st, we're going to phase it in. It's going to start with the property compliant, the stores we already have. They're going to review
relatively is about 132.
all those applications. We've also protected where they can't be manufactured, cultivated, or sold in terms of retail near schools, near parks, near sensitive use locations, daycare centers. All of those things are all, if you will, baked into the legislation.
You've put that on the books already.
Yes,
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a very comprehensive set of regulations. And trust me, we recognize that this is going to kind of be a fluid business, but the council is set up where we're nimble enough to make adjustments as new issues arise. So I feel that we probably are the best prepared city to begin this. And when we need to make an adjustment, we will be able to make that and do it quickly.
Just have to come back around for just a moment to your bank idea, Councilman. So would this be a bank only available to the pot shops, or will this become a bank that all of us can get a checking account or a credit card?
No, that's a good point. Believe it or not, the conversation about this bank started, and there was no talk of the cannabis industry. We have a lot of individuals in this city that are looking for an alternative approach to banking. A lot of individuals that are not comfortable with our major conventional banks. So that's how this conversation began. It evolved into a conversation based on the concern you raised about cash. How could we incorporate the cannabis industry into that?
All right.
So that committee's hearing, and I anticipate shortly we'll have recommendations.
Final word, how soon could this possibly happen if there could be a Bank of Los Angeles?
I would not want to speculate, but it would happen as soon as we could physically make it happen.
Well done. All right, we got to take a break. We'll be back with some more right after this.
You're watching Eyewitness Newsmakers.
We return with our last segment with the leadership of the Los Angeles City Council. Let's talk about homelessness, and in relating to your jobs, Proposition Triple H, tax money. People are asking, where's that housing? How soon is it going to open?
Well, not soon enough. In fact, this is the biggest epidemic and crises we have faced in our lifetime. It's a moral dilemma. It's a challenge for each one of us. We've now seen where this issue has taken over communities throughout the city. There's nobody immune to this issue. And it comes in all shapes and sizes. In fact, it's not just people who are down and out on their luck financially. It's a lot of mental health issues, drug addiction, alcoholism. So it's not just housing, but those critical wraparound services that have to go with it.
And we have about, if I'm not mistaken, there's 9 projects that are being funded by Triple H that are actually coming online now. I have an $8 million project in Sun Valley coming soon, and you have one that's breaking ground as well. So it's not soon enough, but I think the important issue to address is making sure that we can cut through the red tape so that we can get to these groundbreakings and start building houses.
The biggest issue we face, from my perspective, is NIMBYism. We go to a lot, of folks that say you have to solve this, and nobody wants it in their neighborhood.
That's right.
Well, I think that this is the very first time, again, that you've seen the state government, county government, city government come together indicating this is a problem, and somehow, some way together we're going to fix it.
But while
so
we're
moving forward with that. But like Mitch said, and I would say this to the viewers, the problem is siting. Where can we build these facilities? 80% of the voters voted to give us the money to do this. Now we need that 80% of the people to stand with us and help us convince various neighborhoods that the only way this works is if we spread it around the city of LA.
As we've seen, though, with the Skirball fire in Bel Air, one of the really bad sides of people who live on the streets, perhaps through no fault of their own, but open campfires, red flag alert days, looking at more regulation where people live or where they are pitching their tents. Can you do anything more about that?
And we have. I think we struggled with folks living on our sidewalks. Code 5611 is an indication of the hours that people are allowed to actually put up a tent and sleep there overnight. I think we all struggle with the fact that we have emergency shelters that we can't open soon enough. We struggle with the fact that our residents, some of our neighborhoods simply just don't want them in their neighborhoods. And so all of this is a recipe for disaster. And so people are in the Sepulveda Basin sleeping there. There's sometimes as many as 50 people congregated in the basin.
I got to ask you one
Those are all
quick question,
dangerous
because
conditions.
we've got a minute left here on sexual harassment. Does the city have a policy to try to protect?
Just defer to Ms. Martinez.
Well, I'm currently working with Mr. Kokorian on that, and we have a broken system in the city that there is really, we need to create a victim-friendly system by which anyone who has a complaint and it's going through the process, we need to ensure that that manager is actually, that the investigation ends up in the personnel department and that person is going to see the day that the investigation gets completed and that person feels like their case has been heard.
All right, they tell us we have to wrap it up. I want to wish you all a very happy and healthy New Year.
Yes, happy New
Year
Year
to
to
you.
you as
Thank you
well.
for having us.
Thank you
All
very
right, and
much.
come back again sooner.
Thank
Be
you.
assured, we will.
Absolutely.
Much more to talk about to all of you. Final word right after this.
You're watching Eyewitness Newsmakers.
Thank you for joining us this afternoon for Eyewitness Newsmakers. If you have comments about this program, join the conversation on Twitter and Facebook at ABC7Adrian. For all of us at Eyewitness News, I'm Adrian Alpert, wishing you a safe and happy New Year.